Now, this is the pelvic exam. So we still do pelvic exams these days, but again, hysteria does not exist in terms of psychological condition. What we have is, but pelvic exams are still done. And what we have here is that you see that the gynecologist or nurse here is actually feeling and palpating on here. So yes, they have to insert finger, like, okay, this is like one student was like, did they actually put all four fingers in? No, one or two. I can't see the other two fingers here, but again, what the whole purpose is to kind of feel the body of the uterus and also the cervix and the ovaries to see if there's any abnormal tissue or lumps. So this is why pelvic exams are still being done. Even though it's very invasive, it's there to make sure versus like actually having to cut a woman open and look at the and biopsies. You can actually just feel, okay, are there any abnormalities? So here's the histology of the uterine wall. So what does the uterus wall or the wall of the uterus typically look like? And what we have here are two main general layers. So the two main layers are the myometrium. So myo, again, is a root word meaning muscle. So this is the muscular part of the uterine wall. And then you have the endometrium. So endo, again, that prefix that means inner, the innermost part. So this is a layer of tissue, and there's two sublayers. There's actually a functional layer and a basal layer. So the functional layer is the part that actually the embryo actually implants in, and the basal layer, just like the stratum basal or basal lamina, or those basal again is the base of something. So the basal layer is actually the part that's closer to the myometrium, whereas the functional layer, this is the part that sheds every menstrual cycle. Now, back to the pelvic exam. So now we know about the uterine wall. So what are they checking for? So one thing they might be checking for is endometrial cancer. So endometrial cancer, if there's a tumor swelling up here, there is a chance that maybe, so tumors tend to be very hard because you have all these cells crammed into a single space in the tumor. So what you have in endometrial cancer, maybe if there is endometrial cancer, the gynecologist can feel to see if there's some sort of cancerous growth. But what else could gynecologists be checking for when they do a pelvic exam? So not just uterine cancer or endometrial cancer, they can also be checking for these. These are fibroids, and yes, it looks like a lot of them, and sometimes women do develop multiple fibroids. But what do you see here? And do I want you to know the difference between submucosal, intramural, subserosal? Not so much about these subcategories of fibroids, but you should know what uterine fibroids are. So uterine fibroids, they're also known as leiomyomas. They typically develop in the myometrium. Again, the myometrium is the outer layer, the muscular layer, not the same layer as the endometrium. So you can see these fibroids are here in the muscular layer of the uterus called the myometrium. And this is what they look like. So this is a pathological sample from a hysterectomy, and you can see this poor woman had multiple fibroids in her uterus. So it looks very scary, it looks very dangerous, but even though fibroids are huge growths, or can be huge growths, they rarely become cancerous. So even though they sound like a tumor with that oma suffix, these uterine fibroids rarely become actual uterine cancer. Now again, we have our myometrium and our endometrium, and then our uterus as well. And this is our uterine tubes, aka fallopian tubes. Now we're going from the uterus up to these tubes on the left and right, or left and right respectively. So fallopian tubes, uterine tubes are sometimes called salpinx. Again, many names for the same structure. These are the ones linking your uterus to the ovaries.